Welcome back, everyone. The Countdown Cup qualifiers continue, and after what was sort of an up and down day yesterday, more down in the beginning, very much more up in the end, we head to a day that might be a little bit more exciting here, Jake, as the stakes look pretty darn interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely a high-stakes match to start things off. We've got the Gladiators taking on the Paris Eternal, who, the Paris Eternal in particular, they want to win this, and they want to win it cleanly. They want to be above the Shock, going into that top spot, going into next week's qualifier. You know, think about how these teams faced off so closely last time in the Summer Showdown. Going into the Countdown Cup, this is the last tournament before real playoffs, so, I mean, this matters so much for your momentum. You want to set yourself up as well as possible. But at the same time, Paris want to take this cleanly, but the Gladiators, they think they can win this, I think, especially after putting up 2 maps against the Philly Fusion yesterday.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing to note here in the standings is that Paris, they have to win every single map if they want to remain in control of their own destiny, because Shock, they have the tiebreaker over the Eternal, because the way it works out is that regular season matches are used for the tiebreaker, not the tournament matches. So even though the Eternal took the last matchup over the Shock, it still means that for playoff purposes, they cannot get into a tied situation. They have to be above.
Yeah, definitely. And, well, we'll see next week as well. There's more matches to play, and I think Shock probably have a little bit of a tougher match next week going up against Houston, whereas Paris gets to take on the Washington Justice. So I think looking good here going forward for Paris if they can get a good win.
Now, if you missed the matches yesterday, the Gladiators, they looked completely renewed taking on the Fusion, where there was very close to being a sweep, ended up being a reverse sweep, but you look at the players that made it happen. Players like Kevster looking incredible in the Genji. Mirror taking to the tank role, normally a DPS player, looking amazing on the Zarya. I mean, this was a match, Jake.
Yeah, Mirror in particular really impressed me with his Zarya play. You know, we knew he was a proficient Zarya before this, but this has been the first moment, of course, being a rookie player, wasn't playing in the GOATS meta, at least in the Overwatch League. This is the first moment that he's been able to really strut his stuff on a consistent Zarya meta, and he did look like a really big part of the Gladiators' aggression, just putting out a ton of damage on the Zarya. As well, the combos with Kevster and Birdring were on point. So, despite the fact that Philly Fusion made some really interesting adaptations, brought the reverse sweep yesterday, I think if the Gladiators have reviewed that and they're ready for another fight, I think they really could take Paris all the way here.
Oh, the interesting thing, too, is that when you look at the players here that are going to be playing for the Gladiators, I don't think they're going to be changing to the Sombra play again, where they used the Sombra play a lot yesterday, but I personally think they're going to open with the Genji, and Paris will be more than willing to meet them strength for strength.
Yeah, it's going to be an explosive start, especially because, you know, that was where the Gladiators looked best, playing that mirror match, taking on their opponents with that Genji duel. So Kevster looked great, Mirror looked great, Birdring looked, I mean, the whole squad really understands how to play this aggressive dive comp. So if they go head-to-head on this, I think anybody could come out on top.
And I mean, you take a look at the lineup, they're not changing anything at all, and that means it's going to be Mirror again in on the tank. And you know, you're kind of looking at this as a Gladiators fan, you're going, wait, why is Space not in there? What's your reasoning for why we're seeing Mirror in over Space?
Well, what we've seen, the way the meta has gone in North America, you know, look at teams like the Shock that are really leading the charge there. It's been basically locked in Zarya 24/7 more or less. Like, Shock found that they could just make it work, never switch off of it for any reason. And I think if that's your mindset, if that's your focus, then it makes sense to put in a player like Mirror, who is so proficient on the Zarya. Obviously, if you thought you might need to field a Sigma or a Diva, you wanted to change things up, that would be obviously when you bring in Space to play the more flexible role. But you know, this Zarya is more of that natural DPS hero. It is about the core tracking, you know, projectile aim. You know, the bubble timings are a lot more straightforward than I think the tanking role of a hero like Diva or Sigma. So kind of makes more sense for a DPS player to step into this role.
You know, the funny part there is that people look back at the GOATS era with good thoughts, bad thoughts, everything in between. But if you're someone like Mirror, experience that Mirror had to build up last year, where even though he's a natural DPS player, look, you know, when it was 3-3, you had to put in your time on tank, and this is where that experience is paying off, where you get into a season like this, and suddenly you look at your roster, you go, we need a really good Zarya player. Mirror's able to raise his hand and go, I'm there. And, you know, I think for Gladiators fans, it's something that they really wanted to see in terms of just a better performance, right? Where it's a team that people expect a lot out of, and they shocked people yesterday. They really did. And, yeah, even if they didn't get the win overall, it was still a great performance.
Yeah, and I honestly think the loss there was more off the back of just some great adaptation from the Philly Fusion. But, you know, looking now to the Paris roster, checking what they've brought out, I mean, nothing really surprising here, honestly, but I do want to highlight players like Hanbin and Sparkle. I think Hanbin, you know, he is, of course, the normal off-tank player, but this is a player who you might not know. is one of the highest rated all role players in NA right now. He's got an incredibly high rated DPS role. So the fact that, you know, he's normally an off-tank player, it's not going to dissuade him from a hero like Zarya. In fact, I think, honestly, this hero might be the ultimate comfort zone for Hanbin.
Yeah, and you take a look at Hanbin's stats on Sigma, it's just ridiculous. #1 in multiple categories, and the only thing not #1 is the amount of deaths, but all I take away from that, Jake, is that this is a tank that really makes every life count and is more than willing to go in, and you might look at it and go, oh, he fed, but no, if you get enough done, it's worth it to win the fight.
I mean, what I read from this stat is just fearless aggression, right? Like, you know, he's going to take some deaths here and there, but he's always going to be putting himself on the front line, making sure that he's contributing a lot every single fight. So whether it's the Sigma or the Zarya, I think the Zarya might suit him even better in this regard. I'm really excited to see what he comes out with this series.
So Busan is where we're going to be kicking things off, and given that Soon isn't in the lineup here for the Eternal, do you think we're going to be seeing the Sombra still, or do you think this is just going to be a Genji battle between both teams?
I think it's unlikely to see the Genji. What I'm more interested in is Xe in the lineup, right? Like, I would have imagined that if you're going to go the way most other teams are playing, you know, mostly Tracer Genji, then I would imagine Soon would play that. But, you know, Xe has shown a lot of proficiency on heroes like Tracer and Sombra as well. So I don't think it's necessarily out of the playbook, but I do believe that with Sparkle in, Genji is probably going to be a mainstay.
Yeah, and I mean, that would make sense. And I think for the Gladiators, given that they didn't look super great in the Sombra, I mean, Sombra coming into play is essentially why the series turned yesterday. I don't think it's going to be the Gladiators that decide to bring it out here. I think that they're going to look at this and go, okay, let's stick with our game plan. And, you know, the issue here for the Gladiators is that as strong as they were in running that Genji setup, you're running into Eternal that have already proved immense just aptitude for it. So I think this is going to be a very high-octane game.
Definitely. I think the first map, you know, is really high stakes here. Both teams want to set the tempo, especially Gladiators. They came out to a strong start yesterday, but just barely failed to close it out. It would be, I think, a big mental blow here to go down, you know, 1-0, 2-0 to the Eternal. You know, I think despite a good start, losing the last series, now they really want to get that good start so that they can hopefully have better odds to close it out going late.
And again, and we'll just keep mentioning this as it goes on or until they fail for the Eternal, every map matters. And yeah, that gets thrown about a lot here in the Overwatch League, but truly it is the case here because if they want to keep their lead over the Shock, they can't drop anything to the Gladiators here today. So it's not even just about winning the series, it's about doing it perfectly. And we'll see if Paris is able to do that. I think personally it's going to be a little tough.
Yeah, and Paris Eternal rocking a very interesting comp right now. Xe showing on the McCree, which actually makes more sense to me given that they're going to play Xe. Like, the reason you probably play him is you want to play a hit scan, but the rest of the comp as well fits really well with this. You know, I think I love the BAP Brig as well with the McCree. It's, you know, a strong backliner and some strong backline supports to enable him. I actually like this comp quite a lot from the Paris Eternal. However, Xe is going to have to be careful, stay alive, because you can bet the dive is going to come fast from the Gladiators.
So as expected, we are going to have the Genji battle. It just comes down to McCree versus Tracer. Some differentiation here, but also differentiation in the support. Eternal already moving forward, and Sparkle catches Bird Ring so early in the fight. This is a bad omen for the Gladiators as they just get rolled over.
Oh, Sparkle. These are some disgusting shots. Just, I mean, killing Big Goose was, you know, he got the combo from his Winston, but that quick kill on the Kepster, that was really impressive. That's a very difficult type of shot to hit. The double jumping Genji, just a vertical flick right onto him, and man, Sparkle just looks so deadly. Kind of terrifying start to the game here, but Kepster did charge a lot of blade as well.
You know, this is how you can tell where if a player is so good, Jake, that instead of you going into sort of meta-analysis, you just talk about, that player's just good. It's a very impressive play, and I mean, it's the stuff we come to expect from Sparkle. Parasa, now they get to hold back, and they get the McCree in the defensive position here, Jake. What does that mean versus the Tracer?
Oh, it's so much easier when you just have to hold your ground. You don't have to retake. There's no corners to clear. You can just focus on outputting that damage. Now it's going to be No Smite leading in, making space. Hanbin as well. Hanbin so close to the grab right now. He's really dominating.
He's just moving forward. He goes, yeah, the grab would be great. What if I just beam 3 people down? How about that? Unbelievable aggression coming out from Hanbin here, and so far, this doesn't even look close.
I absolutely love to see Hanbin playing like this. I mean, this is what makes this player so good. He's got that incredible DPS fundamental skill that, you know, he doesn't usually play in the Overwatch League, but he has it, which means you take him to a hero like Zarya, absolutely no trouble. And this is such a high tempo. Trance is not ready yet.
Yep, there's a Graviton and the fall through. It's all there. And, I mean, the scary part is that it's so clean and quick. You look at the rest of this for the Paris Eternal, they don't have to use other things, really, just the amp, and they get to save the blade.
Yeah, I think on this particular map, this McCree choice, it's inventive, it's different. I think playing the BAP as well, you don't have that Zen to you know, orb a Genji, but it just, Paris-Eternal, they're playing so aggressive with their Zarya because now, like, you have to dive the McCree, so if you go after Hanbin, you might just get baited and let XE take you out. So I think it's quite complicated to play against Paris-Eternal.
Oh no. Immediately XE strikes, Sparkle on the follow through, 2 for the Paris-Eternal as the Gladiators just barely peek their heads through the door. Blink and you miss it, a Deadeye towards the very end, and a little bit of zoning, but here's the problem for the Gladiators. Who's going to touch the point? Is anyone going to be able to get there? Just barely.
Birdwing has
able to touch.
Use the recall, but all Blinks, I don't think they're going to get another touch here. Someone needs to dash in. Okay, Birdwing does get one more.
Birdwing just hoofed it there. Walked the old-fashioned way, but the problem is for the Gladiators are down 2 immediately. Sparkle's out of the fight, but Hanbin charged up, ready to go. XE, no one looking at him on the side. This is going to be immensely difficult for the Gladiators to try and bring back, especially as they just fall 1 by 1 to Hanbin. Oh, word. That's crazy.
To be down on map 1, I just want to say I absolutely love the strategy from the Paris-Eternal. This is very inventive. We have not seen other teams run this exact comp here, but I think it actually makes so much sense to me. You're running this Bat Brig, which is like the maximum defensiveness on the support line. You know, a Zen would obviously give you more aggressive potential. But because you're running that, I would say, very conservative support line, it enables XE to play a hero like McCree that sort of takes up that greedy spot. And, you know, for teams playing Tracer Genji 24/7, you're really vulnerable to a well-protected McCree. You know, McCree can be a dive target, but next to a BAP and a Brig, a Zarya as well, it's a much more difficult proposition. Sparkle is the one, I think, who's a bit left out to dry here. No Discord Orb to follow up on. And BAP isn't quite the best healer for Genji. But, of course, Sparkle, I don't think he really needs the help. I don't think he needs a perfect composition. He's just so good at the Genji.
And also on the same note, Hanbin's basically been DPS on his own to begin with. And this is interesting from the Gladiators. They're going to go to the Sombra, so learning from their enemies yesterday, perhaps, but I don't know if the swap is going to pan out. I think the Gladiators really struggled to make the Sombra work.
Yeah, I think it'll be tough, especially against a hero like McCree. You've got multiple stuns online, and there it is. I mean, that's an instant 180 flash double tap. Like, it may seem simple, but that's actually pretty hard to do, to hit the instant double headshot there, because even if you're just a second slow on the first headshot, you actually won't get that kill because the Sombra will be able to TP out. So, I mean, the speed at which XE can do that is really, really impressive, and it makes a difference between, you know, forcing a recall, which would be good, and getting a pick, which is just mid-fight winning.
I love how you're just, you know, powering through, you cursing that. There you go. Yeah, the stuns are really good versus Sombra, and then immediately, as if you willed it into an existence, XE immediately takes down Kevster. I mean, there's proving your point, Jake, and that, I don't know, that's just next level.
Yeah, now we're going to see the fight just get going a little bit here. Mirror is getting a lot of grab charge. That's a bright spot for the Gladiators, but the DPS, they're getting really crushed right now. Recall forced, TP forced, so no real pressure, but Shaz opens it up onto XE, and critical kill. Now a lot more space for the Gladiators to work with.
Sometimes you need a little bit of help from your supports. That's a big part of it, but even still, the Gladiators had the back out. Sparkle easily dives into the back. That's beautiful there, Jake, and it's just not stopping.
I like this from Mirror actually committing, but it is very high risk because, okay, I actually don't like that. I thought it was better, but with both DPS dead, I mean, they lost both supports, but then also lost both DPS, so I think that was a bit desperate from Mirror, and you know, it might haunt him now because Sparkle is coming up on that Dragon Blade. You will have Trance as an answer, but I feel like you might just need the Trance to get this fight started. You know, Hanbin has Grab as well, so you know, something like Grab High Noon doesn't really care about a Transcendence.
No, not really, but the Gladiators, I mean, at this point, they need anything to spark a breath of fresh air. You would have thought it would have been the Zen pick. It wasn't. Now you look to Bird Ring. We're an early Pulse Bomb here. I mean, that would be great. But Sparkle's already taken down Mirror. The front line for the Eternal just collapsed on the Gladiators. Sparkle was there for the support, and, I mean, we're not even getting real fights right now, Jake.
The Eternal, they're just oozing with confidence. I mean, the way they're taking these fights to initiate on a Zarya, like, they've initiated on different targets every single fight here. First on the DPS, second time it's on the supports, third time it's on the tank. So nobody knows really where the focus is going to come down, and that makes you so hard to play against. Now it's ultimate advantage towards the Eternal for this last fight. This is going to be a really rough one to retake.
Kevster finally has the MP. It took a really long time to build and does nothing when it's finally out. XE, meanwhile, Deadeye on the point, a little bit of zoning. OG already down. Birdring lands a stick, but that's just one of much to be done as Sparkle doesn't care. Sparkle pulls out the blade, chops down 2, and the Eternal just crushing the Gladiators. This wasn't even close.
ZP, I think we're cursed, all right? Like, all right, let's see the rest of the series, but this is like, that's the fastest you literally can have a Koth map. I mean, there was some overtime, so maybe not, you know, literally as fast, but that was 200 zeros in a row. I mean, ooh, this is a very tough mental situation now for the Gladiators. Having a great start yesterday and failing to close it out, and now you had basically the worst start possible. This is going to need some real tough behind-the-scenes mental fortitude to make it work.
Yeah, Jake, I'm also going to call you out here. I mean, we actually know what really happens. If you were to rip off your shirt right now, there would be a Gladiators shirt underneath it. I know your game. I saw the hustle.
Look, I got a lot of gifted subs. We don't talk about that. You know, there's some non-disclosure agreements going on here.
But yeah, I mean, what more to say? I mean, that was a beautiful execution coming in from the Eternal, and the Gladiators, it looked tough. And, you know, we kind of brought up the idea about maybe Sombra isn't the right idea. Was that the only EMP Kevster charged up? I'm pretty sure it was, and it was not a fast build at all, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the build was so slow. Probably dying early on mid like that was the real reason it didn't come out for so long. Yeah. But the bigger deal was just that the round was incredibly fast. Like, I mean, Sparkle used, I think, one Dragon Blade too. So it was less for me about ult farming and more just about just being decisively routed fight after fight after fight. The dive is way too good right now from the Eternal.
Well, the Eternal, they're looking very good, and Shock fans hoping that they would drop a map. It might not be in the cards, but we'll see if the Gladiators can rebound. We still got more maps left to go.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Pringles Wavy, Big Crunch, Big Flavor. And by Zip Chair Game, the official chair supplier of the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home, or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Well, the first map was a quick one where the stakes for the Eternal quite simple. They need to 3-0 the Gladiators to stay in first place. And Jake, they're definitely sticking with that script thus far.
Yeah, they're on track with just a very quick, first map win, locking in 2 100-0 rounds in a row, which is very difficult to achieve, to be fair. I think this comes down to composition matchup. I mean, obviously the outplay is really impressive from the Eternal. Composition doesn't get you 100-0 rounds. But really, I think it's this McCree comp that not only enables XC to play, one of his very best heroes, if not his best hero, honestly. McCree is pretty disgusting. But what it also does is it means that Hanbin is going to be way more free because you can't just focus on the Zarya as the primary damage threat, peel off Tracer as a diver and then just hunt the Zarya down. With McCree in the lineup, you're just so much more damage pumping out.
So the Paris Eternal, they've been playing really, really well recently, to say the least. We got some time to talk with FD God about how the Eternal view themselves relative to other teams like the Shock.
Personally, I feel like San Francisco Shock are still the best team in NA, but I think we are not really that far behind them either. And I think that most of the people underestimate us because I see a lot of them saying that we won the Southern Showdown just because of the meta. But actually we improve a lot and I feel like we can now play almost every meta and composition at a really decent level.
In a way, I almost feel like FD God undersold that. With how good the Eternal have been playing, I mean, they could just take a little bit more swagger, I feel like, Jake. They've looked incredible.
Well, it's hard to imagine a comp more different than the current metagame, where Paris really cut their teeth and had obviously an insane performance in the Summer Showdown, was on these Orisa comps, building around, the Orisa is just such a fundamentally different hero than, these dive styles. Especially we're seeing No Smite playing over Ben Best. So, a lot of changes for the Paris Eternal, and yet they look as strong as ever right now. So for the Gladiators, I think this is the moment to potentially turn things around, but they're going to have to do it quickly because you don't have so much time left in this series. Like, to go down 2-0 against a team like the Eternal, even if you adapt and you figure out how to beat what Paris Eternal is fielding, that's a long road to the reverse sweep, and you're going to have to continue innovating because we know Paris, they're proficient on many different styles.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for the Gladiators. The tone has been set as we enter our second map. It's going to be Eichenwalde. And we'll see if the Gladiators can do anything to turn it around. But I got to tell you right now, Jake, I'm curious for your thoughts on it, but I do not think the Sombra swap is the way to go. I feel like, you look at the series yesterday, you look at what little we saw from the last map. I think the Sombra style is distinctly weaker for the Gladiators. I just think they're stuck in this conundrum where the Eternal can play their style, but stronger.
Yeah, I don't like the Sombra here, mostly because Xy's already on the McCree. The enemy team is playing Bat Brig, as opposed to a Zen, who is really vulnerable to EMP. So there's like, who are you really EMPing? And I don't think there's a good answer to that question there for the Gladiators. So I like that they're not going to roll out with that comp. I do think it would be a mistake here, just because, McCree can, you can even get flashed out of an EMP, which is just like an instant game loser generally. So I don't like playing heroes that are scared of McCree against a player like Exy. I mean, this is not just any McCree. This is one of the best in the entire league right here, and Sparkle as well. But, I mean, how are you going to find an advantage if you're the Los Angeles Gladiators? Paris Eternal have found a comp here that suits their strengths incredibly well, but also has the flexibility to adapt. So we'll see a little pause here.
This is the one thing we haven't had to experience this weekend when we've been casting, but the pause, it always happens, and again, I kind of look at it as sort of aftershocks from casting with Wolf. Anytime you cast with Wolf, it just haunts you for the next few weeks. It's like, you think you're going to escape that pause mojo? Nah, no you're not.
Yeah, I'm excited to see also whether the Eternal choose to keep Hanbin on the Sigma on this map. I think that actually could be an opening for the Gladiators, because Hanbin's Zarya was really filthy. Just that incredible aggression he was putting on, made a ton of space for Exy. Exy playing the Pharah, don't see that happening, but I'm curious to see what Paris actually roll out with here. Honestly, I want them to just keep playing what they're playing. I think, that comp that dominated last map, I think just keep it rolling, because Gladiators, they clearly have not figured that one out. They clearly don't know the response to it. And honestly, I think it's a very tough comp to answer. I don't think you can look at it in a one-dimensional way, trying to address just one of the threats, because you've got this triple threat, I would say, between the McCree, the Genji, and the Zarya. All three of those are really, really dangerous heroes. And while Shaz has been putting up not only big kills, but big damage on the Zenyatta, I've been seeing a lot of big right clicks come out of him. You know, he's making his presence felt. Just feels like Fielder and FD God don't need to do that. All they have to do is keep those main threats alive, you know, the Zarya and the DPS players, keep them alive, keep them strong, and they're going to do more than a Zen really can. Unless Gladiators can find that quick Discord burst down, which, you know, again, you're playing against BAP, so there's always the risk of going that early in the fight that it just won't work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they run on. I just think the bottom line for the Eternal, they have a lot of options. But, you know, on a more broader note here, everyone hears us talk a lot, but we don't always hear as much from the players. Let's listen in to how the players play the game.
Shock.
Yeah.
Oh my
god.
Okay, that's
We're recording this now, guys.
Don't give him any content.
Don't give them anything. Don't even talk the whole time.
Ah!
Oh, shut up. Bam.
Boys, listen.
What was that?
This is a tradition from now on.
I'm not your bellboy.
Go home. Yeah, go home.
Oh god. What if I miss? What if I miss?
Well, I think you're bad.
No, what?
Do we gotta say fighting? I think we need to.
Fighting?
Let's go fighting. One.
There you go.
Fighting. Yeah, fighting.
Fighting.
There's one.
Can you have what? No, I can't. Let's get it, so skinny!
There's something going on outside my house or something. It sounds like a huge printer is being printed outside.
What's the next map after this?
I forgot.
Wait, there's no next map. Next map is interview. Let's get it. You put Dumbo and Kenji. Yeah. I'm so scared.
Maybe you kill him every fight and then everyone make fun of him.
Oh, I can't because Super is really good.
Hey Kelsey.
Yeah?
When you lose Super Genji, please eat poison, okay?
You mean if I lose?
Huh?
Not win, but if.
No.
No.
He said no.
I think Super is nervous.
No.
Joy, when am I ever nervous?
Shut up.
Hey Twilight, really nobody talking to you? Yeah. Again na watch. Alright, take TP.
Oh. Take TP. No, don't need it.
Oh? Who is this guy? Wait, who is this?
I don't.
Anybody know who that is?
So we're back from what was a quick pause, where in case you're wondering what was happening, Fielder's monitor just decided to disappear. It blew itself up, but he's rebooting, and hopefully everything will be restored shortly. So just a little bit of technical difficulty. Sometimes hardware does things. Nothing more than that.
Yeah, sometimes the monitor goes down, but you know, luckily it's a pause before the start of the round, so at least it's not disrupting the gameplay itself, not going to mess with the flow of the game. You know, what I'm most interested in as we look forward to the series, Gladiators, they're fielding the same comp that they played last map, and of course they were absolutely destroyed by what Paris Eternal brought out. So, I mean, in my mind, like, unless Paris Eternal sort of beat themselves and change it up unnecessarily, then I think they just keep running what they're running and, like, make the Gladiators prove that they can beat that style, because so far, obviously, they haven't shown that. And you know, if you look back to like Funny Astro's post-game interview, you know, he suggested that the Gladiators were a strong team, but not so good at adapting. And given that Paris is playing a comp that pretty much no one else has fielded recently, I think that is really going to be put to the test here. Gladiators, they have to make an in-game adaptation here, and if it's not going to be their comp, it has to be their play style. They have to find the weakness there, find the chink in the armor to really, really punish. You know, this Genji Tracer dive, it can work, it can blow up targets very quickly, but it's a little bit dependent on Fielder making a mistake, right? When you go for that committed dive, if that gets droned at the perfect moment, that could end up being suicide, right? If you go into a McCree and a Zarya who just get saved, they're going to absolutely cut you down in a medium long-term fight.
I think the thing that's really troublesome when you look at the Gladiators here in this matchup is that you think about times where they've looked good. There's individual matchups you could be like, oh, they have this player that, you know, they have an advantage in, say, like the Genji difference or otherwise. I look at between the two teams right now, I feel like Paris has the edge in just about every individual matchup from what we've seen so far, on top of running a really good strategy. It makes the options for the Gladiators, it's limited.
Yeah, oh, there we go.
Oh.
Shaz, though, I mean, he's been a consistent performer. He picked off Exi on a fight earlier. They gave Gladiators a bit of hope, and he put some big damage out. I mean, did mention that, but I'm curious to see, can he keep that up? I mean, Paris have a nice quick reset here. It doesn't really cost them anything, just a little bit of time off the clock. But, you know, maybe Shaz is that player, right? He is an unmatched Zenyatta here. He's going to have an opening to get maybe a little more aggressive. There's no Tracer to punish him. Maybe he's the real key piece here to change things up.
So Paris, they get delayed a little bit on the entry, but now back up to a full 6. Exi with the team once more this time, keeping the distance away from Zenyatta, and OG just gets focused on. Went in, the support wasn't necessarily there, the Eternal turned on him, and now for the Gladiators, you're down your main tank. This is going to be very, very difficult to pull back in the situation, unless they can get a pick here now. Exi gets pretty low, gets away, and Mira's out of the fight.
See, Sparkle still brawling, still fighting. This Zen seems destined to go down. Sparkle finishes him off. Kevster and Sparkle fighting it out, but of course Sparkle gets the help from his team, and just getting overwhelmed here are the Los Angeles Gladiators. Losing OG that early into the fight really is painful. Kind of just let No Smite get incredibly aggressive, and that's the trouble for OG, like playing against this matchup. I mean, unless you can somehow bait the flashbang with like a perfectly timed bubble or with your own shield bubble, then, I mean, you can't escape really from this McCree, and that right-click fan the hammer is just going to burst you down. So I just think this comp is so well designed from the Eternal.
I think it just makes OG a lot more reliant on the rest of his team, where you can't do the usual Winston thing where you dive in, dive out, you be a pest. It's more so you dive in, you get flashbanged, and you die, and that's a real problem for OG at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is. This dive should be a good spot. Birdring, nice tracking, puts out a ton of damage on the enemy Zarya. But
oh no,
the Primal boops Shaz right off the map. Can't even use Trance to save himself from that. So now the card is really rolling into second point for the Eternal, and Rally was all they needed to survive that dive. Kevster had to commit Blade as well.
I think the scary thing to me, Jake, as I watch this, is how one-sided these fights are, where these are not fights that are, you know, potentially about to swing the other way. It's the Eternal winning every single part of the engagement cleanly, and it's just so hard for the Gladiators now. As you take a look at this, Mirror coming out the grab, I mean, it's really the main hope they have.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some other ults to work with, like Trance here. Should be a big edge, should make Sparkle's life incredibly difficult in terms of getting big value. OG's going to come in with the Primal as well, and nice boop there. I think that is one off the map, and should be able to get a quick cleanup onto Exi here. No way to save him, and the ults now come through, but yeah, grab bomb combo does come through, but I actually am a little worried for the Gladiators there. I don't know if that was necessary. I think OG got 2 solo kills with the Primal. I wonder if they could have won that with a little bit less investment, because now the ult bank is going to swing drastically in favor back of the Eternal.
This was on the other side as the Primal was going off. Good Graviton setup, pulls in 3. Bob is there. But you're exactly right. You look at the next fight, and this is going to be problematic, where the Eternal, I mean, I think they're actually okay with how that transpired. They have plenty of time left, and they have the advantage going into the next fight.
Yeah, you really want to pick off right now. It would be so high impact for the Gladiators to get a quick pick, especially while they're crossing this choke. He's so low on the map, but the drone is going to keep him up. Oh, but Mirror finds the kill.
That's big. Taking down Fielder, I mean, you cannot understate how important the healing FAP is, and now the Gladiators, they can move at their leisure. Now they use the Transcendence here, Jake. As this is going on, do you think they need to invest that? Because they're already working at big advantage.
Maybe. It's a very chaotic fight, right? So 1 kill, it might not guarantee it for you. I think the Trance there, it makes sense because it enables the fight to clean up very, very quickly, so Gladiators aren't at risk of like dropping a player. The most important thing playing this dive comp is that you're ready to threaten the choke cross. That is where Paris Eternal has their weakest moment, trying to cross this open space, just eating a ton of spam. You know, that's where we saw Fielder fall before. We'll see if Gladiators can find the same thing again. They would love another pickoff, really stabilize them, but at least now ults have stabilized to some extent.
Yeah, I don't think they're heading into a losing fight for sure, the way they potentially were before. And okay, Graviton comes out early, Eternal falling through off Hanbin's setup, and the Gladiators, now they just have to back out, reset, wait for respawns. They have time to wait for the respawns, Jake, with where the payload is, but they're in a tough position right now where they have to get out cleanly.
They're okay, though, because they're still controlling some of the map, but as I say that, Bird Ring falls, so a crucial piece in terms of map control off the table. Sparkle is going to commit the Blade with a Primal as well, and this got to be second point.
Yeah, one would think, and ooh, nice juggle there from NoSmite. A little bit excessive, but man, does it work. The Eternal now about ready to break down the castle door. Birdring, though, back on in. Gets one pulse bomb pick off. Hanbin off the map. I don't think that's going to be enough, but this delay, at least keeping the opportunity out there. And okay, the Gladiators are getting back out. I think the Eternal have to go back in. I mean, this is very difficult now. The Gladiators are going to start trickling back out.
Oh, that kill into Shaz is massive, though, so that is going to cut off the healing to enemy Brig. Fielder still brawling it out, and it's just delay now. But Gladiators, they're in a decent position, I would say, to hold last point. Paris Eternal are going to have one pretty easy fight, I would say, with this Graviton Surge. However, they're going to have to play fast tempo because Shaz, you know, we know how deadly he is on the Zen. It's going to be a very small amount of time before he has the Transcendence ready to counter, and Exe does not quite have a Pulse Bomb either.
No, not just yet. The Eternal, though, 2 minutes left for point C. Not too bad at all. Gladiators would love to get a little bit more buffer, win this fight outright, and NoSmite falls immediately. Hanbin, though, still looking to turn. Drops Graviton, forces out the Transcendence, Pulse Bomb out. And the Eternal still struggling to push the Gladiators back. The Transcendence does its job and more. And Fielder falling towards the end. The Gladiators, they buy themselves even more time.
Yeah, that was absolutely last second possible for Shaz. He gets the Trance just in time to heal up OG so the Pulse Bomb doesn't kill him. Very, very close there. Just a split second decides that fight, really. And now, honestly, Gladiators, they're in really, really great position. That was the hardest fight I think that they'll face. And Exe onto the Tracer, which, you know, despite being a strong Tracer player, I do think this is where Birdring is going to have the edge. I think the McCree Exe looks even better. So now going up against the Grav, you don't have a support ult. Sparkle, I'd be surprised if he commits this Blade. I think he'd probably just hold on to it and die to the Grav, but this should be just a simple fight. I mean, I think Grav only is the ideal fight here for Gladiators.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Eternal, they try and make this two-fight territory, but we'll see. Fielder down immediately. The choice not in Eternal's hands at all. They're going to have to try and win in the next fight. A very swift execution.
Even better, actually. Gladiators. Blade only. That's even cheaper than Grav only, so that was even more efficient than I thought. So nice by the Gladiators, holding on to this Ultimate Economy lead. And time is low. Fielder didn't really get much trance at all out of that last fight. Now you do have Primal to potentially open things up, but Primal against the Zen comp, I mean, you can easily die in a Grab with Primal for Zen just farming you.
Mirror, normally a DPS player, didn't have to play against Genji a whole lot as Zarya last year. This is where Gravitons get deflected. If Sparkle wants to increase the legend, but no, Graviton not deflected as it turns out. Fielder immediately down. Kevster right there. I mean, Sparkle holding onto Blade, the Eternal, 30 seconds left, so they still have time for one more, but it's not going to be a great position.
Yeah, the key problem here, though, is that you've got double support ult on the side of the Gladiator, so, oh no, and OG just wants to end this fight before it even begins. If Hanbin goes across this bridge, I think he's asking for death, so nice, intelligent play here to come down this right side, but I still think OG is going to get a great initiation on their back right now.
OG jumping on down, Primal ready, already Fielder on the fight, both teams down to Zen. Sparkle has pulled out the Blade, in the backline, already two. It's a bit of a scrappy fight from both sides, but one the Eternal can still keep in progress. Hanbin getting very close to building Grab as OG just juggles around, looking for the Zarya on top of it. Hanbin might not be able to drop it, he goes off the map, OG! An absolute monster! But now the Gladiators, they still have to clean up here in the payload. Kevster pulling out the Blade, looking for a little more, slices down FD God. More ready to go. You got the emergency ball out here from NoSmite as the Eternal. Now they're just trying to get as much progress as possible, but it ends right there.
Very nice hold by the Gladiators. First and second went pretty quickly, but the Gladiators, they stabilized, they played really intelligently, great ultimate usage. So all around, they just looked like the stronger team there, especially when it went down to that, you know, classic meta in the mirror match. That's where Gladiators dominated the Philadelphia Fusion. So Paris Eternal might be maybe better off sticking to their guns, especially, you know, the gunslinger himself, McCree, because honestly, in the mirror match, Gladiators look dominant.
Yeah, I mean, the difference McCree makes is pretty insane, especially compared to map 1. Now, one thing I will note here, again, if you're a Shock fan watching this, you're really happy with what you're seeing, because if the Eternal drop this map, if they drop Eichenwalde here, Shock shoot up to the #1 seed for the Countdown Cup, and the way the Shock have been playing, I don't know if the Shock are going to give up a map, so the Eternal, if they want to maintain control of their own destiny, they need to bring this map back.
Definitely. They are going to go back to their bread and butter, this McCree comp. I think this is wise. This is where the Gladiators struggled before, but now the Gladiators, they have a bit of wind in their sails, and especially OG. You know, I know he is a player who's just really hard on himself in general. You know, expects himself to be one of the best, if not the best player out there. So I think that loss was really tough on him yesterday, but the fact that he can come out now and, despite the first map being so brutal, come out with a really, really great Winston performance there to hold Eichenwalde for his team really makes me happy for OG. I want to see this guy succeed.
Definitely. I mean, one of the most fierce competitors in the entire league. Has been around on multiple teams, but it would be a great story for OG to have that redemption. The Eternal, meanwhile, I mean, the McCree on the defense, this is going to be tough for the Gladiators to break.
Definitely. This is, I think, the real test here, because this is the comp that so far I don't know if they won a single team fight against it. So my question for the Gladiators is what's different here? Shaz has been the difference maker a couple times. The big difference here is he might have a lot of space, no Tracer to worry about. He might be able to just lay out those big right clicks, and Gladiators doing a nice job posturing for space here. They push Paris back into the corner, but Paris, they still have teeth and claws right now.
It's excellent focus fire. Sparkle taken down. Couldn't get away. Now Kevster gives up his life for it. So it's not quite over yet. Fielder finds Birdring, and the Eternal solidify. But there's a real opportunity there, and the focus fire on the both Sparkle and Nosmite coming in from the Gladiators was very impressive as that fight kicked off.
Yeah, well done, and Nosmite doesn't want to give up. He is going to finish off this Brig as well, so a little extra meal on the plate. Nice little Brigitte pickup. And I love the way Paris does that, actually. They back all the way to the corner, but in doing so, they maintain their HP reserves. They maintain their cooldown so that when Gladiators do overstep, even though they get a kill, it ends up being punished, you know, much more brutally. So nice work, and now they've got the ultimates to work with, especially this Amp Matrix. It could be tough. You don't have any of that raw damage mitigation besides the Genji deflag.
Amp Matrix out here for the Eternal. The Gladiators are going to use Transcendence just to let them move in deeper, ignore the Amp Matrix to a degree. No Smite again. Pretty heavy focus fire, still gets out of the line of fire. And you look at this for the Eternal, people get low, but they don't always fall. They're able to get out. So the Gladiators, they focus fire to a point, but finding those final eliminations, turning difficult as Hanbin finishes off Birdring, now very close to a grab.
Man, actually he's so sharp on this McCree. Blink all you want, he says, and he still finds those shots on the Birdring, sets him low. Now, Kevster going with the blade, but Xy's already done his damage, and the grab is just going to instantly counter that out.
Yeah, I think the grab was just being saved as anti-blade there, and might not have even been needed in that instance, but still, you want to be sure you're on defense. And look, the surest way for the Eternal to win this map, Jake, the way the other stages played out, just win it here in point A where your McCree comp is the strongest.
Definitely. I think second point is also good for the McCree comp, so I don't think it's all about first here. Gladiators, this is just the first hurdle for them. They do have one tick and some pretty significant ultimate advantage, so Sparkle, you know, he's going to have to get value out of this blade, but he's going up against a grab and a rally, so two of the best answers in all of the game of Overwatch here. So I think Sparkle's got his work cut out for him. This should be a winning fight for the Los Angeles Gladiators.
Gladiators, minute 20 left to go. Sparkle, though, has the blade. Looking to the back, takes down Chaz immediately. One so far, but Birdring doing more work in the back. Both teams fighting out. Hanbin could be an X Factor, even FD got down, but it's just Hanbin and no Smite around. Hanbin down. And this should be the Gladiators fight. Don't think you're going to have a crazy stall delay coming in, especially not 2 ticks on the board.
Yeah, the blade was nice, but honestly, I like that decisiveness from Mirror to just, you know, ignore the fact that the Genji's going in on his backline, and he sets up this great grab combo for Birdring. Birdring also so disciplined. He always breaks the drone first. He never allows the drone to counter his pulse bomb. He's so careful with that because obviously that kind of mistake would just cost you that team fight.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just sort of the adaptation play over time, learning to deal with DAP after he's been out now for quite a while. Still, though, a good amount of time being burned off the clock. Gladiators setting a slower pace. The Eternal did. We'll see, about 2 minutes, 50 seconds. The Eternal looking to hold it off.
Grab for Hanbin, see if he wants to use it. He'd love to win this fight without it, but he's so low, dropping below 50 HP, and Trance as well, forced from Shaz in a losing fight. Xe looking uncontested here on the high ground after he takes down OG. Oh, but maybe a little overconfident. Didn't really need to break that bubble, and Birdring punishes him hard for using those cooldowns.
Birdring still hanging out on top, still being a pest. Still giving the Brigitte a little bit of respect. Not the easiest terrain for a Tracer, but still can be worked around.
Yeah, and Birdring, he does have his pulse bomb. He'd love to be able to find that, you know, on one of these backliners. Grab onto both tanks, but can they follow this up? Looks like they will be able to, so nice initiation there from Eternal, and it resets Mirror on that energy charge. So valuable.
It's always funny when you see a Graviton go in from long range like that. Something that obviously with heroes like Sigma, Diva, usually in the meta, Zaryas are a little bit more discerning, but hey, sometimes you can get away with it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, against the enemy Zarya, it actually is relatively common, right? Your Zaryas are going to be trading at that, particle beam range, and that's where your grab is going to be so reliable. Zarya doesn't really have any technique to escape or block that. But, once again, Paris Eternal find themselves in control of the ultimate economy. I like what Birdring is doing tapping this cart, though. I do want to see him keep pushing that cart. Maybe force Paris Eternal out of position.
I'm glad I just need to make a bigger move soon.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, gee, the disruption off the top. That's going to make the Eternal think twice. OG not done yet. Hanbin just getting smushed as OG continues to push into the back. Kevster pulls out the blade for the support. 2 more piled on. And the Gladiators finally make their move, and it's a good one.
Beautiful by OG. That just completely blew the fight wide open. Perfect primal, and he's managed to come in with full HP. He didn't get poked before going for that big knockoff. So Paris Eternal, they were not ready for that at all. And the next fight, I think, is going to be very, very difficult. You've got DPS ult, but High Noon is not really the best ultimate in this composition matchup. And Blade is going to be potentially hard countered by Trance as well as Graviton Surge.
Here we go, Sparkle on the way. Blade out, and okay. Sparkle, rough movement here. Mirror waits, puts the grab when it's safe. We'll see if the Gladiators have to fall through. OG's already low. Sparkle is able to find him, and the Eternal, they found a way back out into the fight. And with OG out of the fight, it makes it hard. Hanbin down 5-on-5. And the Eternal just hanging out at the payload right now, making the Gladiators move to them. Sparkle gone. Birdring moving in even deeper. Kevster out of the fight. And it's a lot of trades right now, Jake.
Yeah, not having Hanbin, though, is a huge deal here. Mirror is relatively uncontested on this Zarya. Xe does find one with the High Noon. That's a massive pick-off. The Zenyatta so good at closing off this fight. Big Goose is all in now. Going to commit the rally, but he's just barely staying alive on the skin of his teeth. This fight is so close.
It's overtime right now. The Gladiators, they're out of time. They need to push it over and in. Hanbin, though,
grab.
sets off the Graviton. Doesn't do much. Meanwhile, Kevster in the back has the blade. Takes down Xe. Looking for more. Set up the grab for his own team, but can't get close. Gets moved back. Stunned down. The Eternal. They hold on here on point B thus far. Transcendence coming in to buy a little bit of time, but this one looking just about over. They hold off the Gladiators and go up 2-0.
Wow, what an incredible final fight there. It just came down to the tiny details. I think Kevster dying with Blade ready really broke it open, as well the High Noon onto Shaz. Just so many, moment-to-moment decisions there that saved that fight for the Eternal. And, I think they did look incredibly strong continuing to play this comp, but I will say cracks beginning to show for the Eternal. That map was much closer. The Gladiators, when they were able to force a mirror match, that Tracer Genji with the Zen Brig, they did look like the better team. So for the Eternals part, they just need to maintain playing this McCree comp, but I think that could be more difficult going to an Assault game type. It's too soon to tell.
Well, if they're a crack showing, I'll tell you why they're a crack showing. It was OG's Winston pounding on the glass. OG had a fantastic map there, Jake, even in defeat.
Definitely, have to agree with that. Like, Icon is a great point for Winston, but he really made it work. Tons of knockoffs, tons of opening disruptions with the Primal. So great work by OG. And overall, I think this series is maybe a little bit closer than the scoreline would suggest.
Yeah, especially when you look at Eichenwalde. But the scoreline, it is absolute. It's 2-0 right now for the Eternal. We're going to throw it here to our Watchpoint halftime show. Give us a little bit more insight.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League. Welcome to our first game break presented by Cheez-It. Grooves, Zoe here, joined by Costa and Reinforce. And currently the Paris Eternal are in the lead 2-0 against the LA Gladiators. The first map on Busan was absolute domination. So let's talk about it, because this one ended with basically 200-0. And we were a little surprised, I guess, also to see what the Paris Eternal had in store for us, Costa. They run out with the McCree and it looked really good.
Yeah, you can tell that the Paris Eternal have done their research from yesterday when the Gladiators came out with a lot of the Tracer Genji. We all expected them to come out with that again. The McCree does a really good job of shutting both of those down, because it pretty much puts a target on his back and forces the Gladiators to, sort of forces their hand to go aggressive into it. Instead of trying to mirror them on it, put Xe on this Tracer or put someone else on the Tracer like Soon, they decide to enable the rest of the team by putting Xe on McCree and really shutting down Kevster and Birdring from just running around the map like they had been so much. And it just worked perfectly on this map. It wasn't even close. You saw the first fight of the second round on Shrine. They just walked into the Gladiators and there's nothing they could do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel a bit bad for the Gladiators, because obviously yesterday they came off a map 5 reverse sweep by the Philadelphia Fusion in the last match of the day, and now you have to reset mentally for the first match of the day here on Sunday. And I think, as Costa said, like, Paris Eternal, they were prepared, they had a good strategy, and the Gladiators haven't really been able to catch a break, really, and find some momentum. It looked pretty good at one point on Eichenwalde, because it's harder to make that McCree work, but on Busan, I mean, it was just a masterclass. 11.4 final blows per 10 minutes from Xe, and eliminations almost at 30. He didn't die as well. Like, it's so hard for the Gladiators to really dive on top of him and get those kills. So you can see it reflected in the stats, how much of an impact Xe had.
Now we moved over to our second map, Eichenwalde. That one looked quite a bit closer. Reinforce, you particularly really enjoyed watching it, actually exclaiming that several times during our time watching.
I mean, I thought it was a really entertaining map. It had some 2017 flashbacks with the compositions with the Winston, etc. So I thought it was very enjoyable. The McCree doesn't work as well on Eichenwalde, especially on the attacks, because you have to deal with the high ground, etc. So you're an easy dive target in that regard, unlike on Busan, where you get neutral sightlines. And also, the Gladiators stepped up their game a little bit. I think OG on the Winston played pretty well and had a lot of impact plays, and they were able to dive a lot easier and make their win conditions work. So I thought this was a pretty back and forth map, and I did enjoy seeing both teams pop off in their own respective compositions.
What kind of adaptations did you see on that second map, Costa?
Oh, well, yeah, I was actually just about to bring that up. I think it was really cool how it adjusted. As Johnny just said, the McCree doesn't work anywhere near as well on attack on Eichenwalde, so they actually switched over to the Tracer so they could get control of that castle and really gain more space. They did get held on third by Gladiators having a really good sort of staggering of ults. But then we go on to the defense, and McCree, Johnny can speak to this as 2017 vibes. McCree standing on top of that castle on the second point on defense is so hard to deal with. But then you see great adaptation from OGE, jumping up primaling, knocking everyone to the floor, and then that gave them the opportunity to get through to the second point, but unfortunately just fell short at the very end. But it's just really cool back and forth in this map.
Well, OG definitely had quite a few moments, and one of them made it into our crunch time presented by Cheez-It Grooves. And that was, of course, his phenomenal setup over on Eichenwalde defense to help hold Paris.
Yeah, I think this was a neat little Winston play. It's proactive, so they're setting up before Paris Eternal have a chance to engage. And OG actually managed to gain some good picks on this. Him and Kevster team up, and they pick out both the Fielder and FD God. Obviously, timer is running down here for Paris Eternal, so they have to touch the cart. And OG makes a proactive play here with the Primal Rage as well to wrap things up. Gets a lot of nice picks, and this is what we love to see from OG, because we always talk about his Winston skills. He is one of the best Winstons in the league, and this is what he does best. So you can see him here sitting on top of the castle, diving into the back line just as Nosemight dives him in himself. So a really nice play from OG, and I think he is a bit of a win condition for the Gladiators here if they want to actually reverse sweep the Paris Eternal here, because his Winston skills are supreme, and you can see it in the stats here as well. Almost double the final blows per 10 minutes. If you take a look at the Primal Rage kills as well, double the Primal Rage kills. So obviously OG is finding a lot of value there, Costa referenced the time on point B where he managed to disrupt a lot and knock Paris Eternal off the high ground. So OG is finding a lot of good picks here, and he's also making a lot of big impact plays. So OG a standout player for me on the Gladiators, even though they are down 0-2 at the half.
All right, and we're now going to head over to Volskaya. Costa, we do see some substitutions coming in as well for the Paris Eternal. Exi is going to be out. Soon is going to come in for him, and Sparkle will also be swapped out, and Nico will be playing in his stead. And what does that tell you about the composition we are most likely going to see from the Paris Eternal?
If I'm taking a stab at this, I'm thinking we're going to see Tracer Sombra coming out from the guys. Put Soon on the Tracer, Nico on the Sombra, and I think they're going to play this dive style that we saw from the Philadelphia Fusion yesterday. Be very aggressive, sort of catch the Gladiators off guard.
Right, well, let's see if that is coming to fruition and if they can make it a quick 3-0 against the LA Gladiators, or if they have it in them to now themselves start their comeback, just as Philadelphia Fusion did against them yesterday. So, without any further ado, let's just head on over to map number 3.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch. The Overwatch League is brought to you by HyperX. Unleash your style, unleash your fury with HyperX Fury Memory. And by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
C'est Nico avec une duplication incroyable et les Los Angeles Gladiators qui s'enferment en intérieur, qui se font détruire.
Fortunately for them, it is. The Moira just hoses the Eternal down. They stay in the fight, but No Smite was hacked and there was the self-destruct.
Primordial de la part de No Smite qui a été envoyé. Nico qui va revenir sur un Doomfist. Soon qui est toujours en vie sur sa Tracer.
Same comp, right, with your Moira as well. That'll be an EMP. They don't connect with Nico. But I think now if you're the Paris Eternal, you probably just cut your losses and back up.
Welcome back, everyone. It has been one half of play already, and the Eternal picking up where they left off, just being crushing over the Gladiators. Although the Gladiators, some signs of life there, especially from OG on Eichenwalde, leading one to think that maybe there's a chance as we head into Volskaya.
Yeah, Eichenwalde was a very, very close map. I think had Gladiators capped point B, they pretty much had that one in the bag, given how well they defended at that point, point C rather, in the defense round. But now as we get into the next map, if we look back to the last series Gladiators played, this is going to be a pretty rough moment in the history, right? This is where things turned around and where the Gladiators got reverse swept, at least the start of it. We are going to see some roster changes coming in for the Paris Eternal here, though.
Yeah, the first roster swap to talk about. We got Nico swapping in. Obviously, Nico used to be a mainstay all the time for the Eternal, now getting less playtime as Sparkle has come of age. But I'm curious to see how Nico gets used here, because Nico, one of the most versatile players around.
Definitely highly versatile. I mean, honestly, though, this is a bit surprising to me because the Genji is so dominant right now. You don't seem to be forced to switch off of it. But we'll see. I think it could be possible they just want to get up some playtime. They could be really confident in this match.
Soon also getting swapped in over Exi, and this makes all the sense in the world to me, where you think about who plays the Sombra on the Eternal. It's Soon. Sombra did not mix well with the Gladiators yesterday on Volskaya. The Fusion figured that out, and I mean, this could be the kryptonite being brought out just to finish it in style. And you look at Soon's Sombra stats here, Jake. Soon isn't necessarily the most damaging of Sombras, but very good at hack timings and setting up the rest of his team.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to the high level, it really is all about getting those good hacks, especially in those first fight scenarios. And on 2CP in particular, I think those right-click hacks tend to define the engagement. If you find the right target, that's a quick pick-off for the rest of your team. You don't necessarily need to be dealing the damage.
So it is Volskaya that we're heading into, and, not really the best memories here for the Gladiators, given how yesterday went. Not the best memories for me, given my banter with Achilleos, but it is what it is, right? We got to do what we got to do, and I think for the Gladiators, we'll see if they've learned any lessons in the 24 hours between the Fusion game and now. I'm curious to see how this turns out, though, especially if the Eternal decide to bring up the Sombra, because, I mean, I don't know if 24 hours is enough time for the Gladiators to have found a good answer.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I think this is pretty wise from the Eternal to shake things up when you're up 2-0, because this shows, not only it shows a ton of confidence that the enemy team is going to be more than aware of, right? If you're subbing out a player like Sparkle, it's like, could there be a stronger statement, really? We are going to see right now in Paris Eternal, they're going to be playing exactly the comp that the Gladiators got bopped with yesterday. So I hope the Gladiators, for their sake, hope them been reviewing game tape, prepping for the situation, because it is about to hit them right in the face.
Yeah, and I mean, I could almost not fault them in a sense if they didn't think they would see it here, simply because the Eternal, I mean, you got a Genji player as good as Sparkle, you keep riding that, but it is Volskaya, it is Assault, where arguably Sombra could be a little bit more impactful given the way the fights break out, where you only need one good fight to take a point, and we'll see if the Gladiators have the answer, because yesterday, they didn't.
What's interesting, though, to me about the Eternals comp is I think this is a comp that's optimized for the mirror match. The Lucio Moira, they work great against an enemy Sombra because, the Lucio can hide in weird corners in the high ground, up on the wall and drop the beat to counter EMP. Moira as well can fade the EMP. But against a Genji, okay, well, Gladiators are going to play the mirror on DPS. I don't like this. I'd rather than play Genji, honestly, into this comp. But Birdwing, finds the enemy Sombra at least. Is forced to recall, though.
So Sombra, EMP building going to be incredibly crucial between the two teams. The neutral fight here, interesting with Sombra v Sombra, Jake, because there's no team that's at a little bit of weakness. Both teams can play at full strength. And already FT God getting pretty low, but Mirror isolated, taken down. That's huge as the Eternal now have a big edge.
No Smite, though, pays with his life, and with no Winston, I mean, the Zarya going down is big, but OG, he's cruising toward that Primal. 95, there's no way they're going to expect this. OG gets a kill, though, so I think he doesn't even need it. This is a beautiful attack by the Gladiators.
Yeah, the Gladiators hold on despite the early pickoff, and I mean, key there was just getting no Smite immediately. If the Eternal was able to secure a full 6 for even a little bit longer, it would have turned the other way, but yeah, the Gladiators in a much better spot.
To be honest, I'm a fan of this break Zen. I don't like the Lucio Moira in this comp. I think it can work when you're both playing Sombras. Like, the power to fade EMPs and dodge them and counter them is big. However, I think the Zen and the Brig, as long as they don't get EMP'd or bursted down, they just do so much more over the course of a long fight. And that Discord Orb makes all the difference in the world. That's the reason No Smite goes down there, is because he just gets bursted so quick.
Fielder again drop the Cole early. The Eternal looking to take the initiative, and they do. Shaz falling immediately, and we talked about the Eternal having aggression, players like Hanbin having aggression, and it's about as aggressive as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play the Moira, that's how to do it, right? Initiate the fight every single time. You have to play fast tempo. However, it's such an obvious initiation that Gladiators just commit nothing, right? They don't have the support ult to counter, so they just give up, go next fight, and you're close to some other ults, you're close to the EMP, but with Rally and Trance online, it's far from a sure thing fight win. Although that kill into Bird Ring, beautiful work by Soon and Nico, because that sort of reset is exactly what Paris Eternal needed, right? They were 20% off all their ults. Now they're going to have all their ults.
So we're about to head into an EMP v EMP fight. What's the win condition for either team once this goes down?
It's all about the support ulted usage. I think the ideal situation for the Gladiators is to just trance the EMP and survive it that way, and vice versa for the Eternal. They want to have FD God dodge the EMP and then get the beat off. However, you still have Grav, so Transforce very early, and no, Mirror is bursted as well. Counter EMP does come down, and it does find a good 4 players. Birdwing with a follow-up.
Birdwing right in there. Both teams trading up back and forth. The problem for the Gladiators is that they've lost enough people here, Jake, that I don't think they're going to be able to easily move forward, turn this into advantage. OG, a little bit of wrestling with No Smite on the other side. And now the Gladiators are still going to go forward, but respawns are coming in for Paris.
Yeah, OG's getting punished, but he's so low, just does not quite get the healing in time. Chaz has switched over to the Lucio, and he may come to regret this if the stabilization comes through. He is getting chased down by No Smite, but Chaz doing actually nice work surviving, and Gladiators want to just keep this rolling, but I think without Big Goose, it's just over here, and now Chaz is pretty hard reset on the ultimate charge, and oh man, I mean, it was I like the idea in theory to commit to Lucio there, but it's so costly when it doesn't work out like this.
I just think it was going to be a tough ask. Did FD God just do that?
What is he? I mean, he's just fragging him. Just kill them all, man.
Come on. Oh.
And he's out of there.
things you don't expect Lucio's to do, but they get away with anyways. But I feel like that last fight, Jake, was really tough from the onset, where the Gladiators were down people before they could really invest a whole lot ult-wise, and they still tried to make it work, but just hard on Assault when you lose players early.
Yeah, it came down to Hanbin's fast tempo grab. The fact that Chaz tried to trance to save him, but the trance didn't even save the Zarya, it just meant that they didn't have the resources they needed to counter the EMP when it did come down. However, you do have Kevster with an uncontested EMP. It is faded by Fielder, though, so he's going to get the Cole out. Perfect dodge by Fielder.
And the Eternal, the EMP's gone. They're still in a great spot. Cole out here from Fielder. Hanbin setting up the grab. And the Eternal just rejecting the Gladiators at every moment. And not just kill feed clean up there before you look at it. Go, FD got 3. It's like, okay. A lot of work was done by the rest of the Eternal heading into that.
Yeah, to be honest, EP, I don't love playing Sombra into the Lucio Moira, right? The reason you pick the Lucio Moira is basically to have a good matchup against Sombra, because as we see, Fielder just fades the EMP, and he's got no trouble. Here we get to watch FD got a little cleanup on the grab, just sniping those heads. Of course, assisting mostly his team's damage there. But those cleanup kills are nice on Lucio.
One Graviton, another. We'll get way more Bird Ring. Looking for the stick, looking for the finish. Meanwhile, Nico lands his stick on OG. It's far more impactful. The Eternal, look at how deep they're willing to dive here, Jake. They go, what about the front gate? We don't care.
Yeah, although it does cost a lot of ultimates there. That's going to be EMP, Pulse Bomb, as well as Primal committed. You only really have the beat here to stabilize for the Eternal. And Kevster, if he gets some good EMP farm in the next few seconds, we could see a slow fight with the Gladiators rally that just gets them to the choke, because Paris Eternal has been relying on these very fast ultimate-backed initiations, and I don't think you really want to do that with beat here. They are going to do it. I mean, this is... I don't love this, though.
Well, they reject your advice, Jake. What do you know? Perhaps a little bit more, though, as No Spite immediately falls. I think your advice might have been sound there, Jake, but the Eternal, they were feeling themselves. They could be feeling themselves out of a point if this continues to go against them. The Gladiators, one after another, starting to snowball their way in. And Hubris might be the fall of the Eternal here, Jake.
They're still going to get a refight, though. No strong counters, really, to Graviton's Surge here. Hanbin, he's looking for a good one, but he's getting booped into the corner, and he's only going to get OG. OG doesn't mind tanking that for his team. It is going to cost him his life. However, the fight is still going, and oh, what a stick by Bird Ring. Takes down the high-energy Zarya.
That's the Gladiators staying alive. They get the cap here in point B. They do it with 55 seconds remaining. Not over a minute, that key threshold, but still a decent time bank for what it is here in Volskaya. And, okay, we just got to rewind here, Jake. You were in the process of saying, okay, the Eternal, they probably should go super aggro at the beat here. They go super aggro at the beat. They lose No Smite immediately, and it just snowballs against them. What was going through their heads there, and also your own, when you look back at that situation?
Well, I think it is the way Paris Eternal was successfully playing for fight after fight after fight, but I do think Beat is just a fundamentally different ultimate, right? Beat provides an incredible amount of defensive utility for a very short amount of time. And the problem is that when you beat aggressively like that, and you don't have any other aggressive ults to follow up with, that if you can't get kills within the beat timing, then it doesn't really provide value, right? And when you're going up against things like Transcendence, that there's just no way, given what Paris is running, that they're killing through trance unless you've already got the target bursted before the trance comes out. The trance online like that, you're just never going to get a burst kill. And if you think about how deep Snow Smite was, I mean, that was a little bit crazy. So maybe they're feeling themselves a little too much. You couldn't really blame them, though. It has been a really dominant series for the Eternal. But a mistake like that could come back and bite you.
Well, especially in Assault, right, where losing one fight means giving up the point in some circumstances if it's decisive enough. And that sort of error where you misjudge a fight and you lose decisively, I mean, it can come back to bite you. But the one way, Jake, to make it all a distant memory, just have a great attack now and you won't really care too much.
Definitely. This first fight is going to be the truly tougher test for the Gladiators in particular. The Zen can be so strong with Trance, but while you're still trying to build that ultimate, you are a lot less effective.
Under a little bit of pressure, Discord Orb on. The Eternal, though, not really waiting a long time to get onto the point, making the Gladiators adapt to them. And now Kevster able to punish No Smite pretty early on to fight Nico, though. Down to the back. Gladiators charging back into the Eternal. Counter-engage looking to be a little bit more effective here thus far.
Yeah, the Discord Orb is really paying dividends. Shaz staying alive through the nice work of Big Goose to keep his friend up, and that's just going to mean the damage is massively advantaged for the Gladiators. And Fielder, most importantly, Fielder did not really get much Coalescence Charge out of that fight. I think that came from No Smite and OG trading their lives so quickly. But the Gladiators, they want trades like that. Paris Eternal wants their whole team alive, stacked up, so that Moira can just cleave them for big heals. But when fights start going down to less and less players, that's where Brig and Zen really take over.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit tough for the Eternal because you do hope to get that early call. Shaz, though, matching that point for point here. And Gladiators staying spread, not giving the Eternal any easy initiation openings, but got Nico. Pulse bomb's ready to go. Under pressure from Discord Orb immediately, looking for the pulse, but the EMP coming on out, and the Gladiators immediately follow through, and it's a really nice EMP from Kevster.
Yeah, I like committing the EMP early like that. You know, Beat is really the counter that the Paris Eternal has for the EMP, but when you just use EMP, you know, as soon as possible, there's pretty much never going to be a sound barrier to counter, which means it is going to be a one ultimate fight victory. And now Gladiators, they got 5 other ultimates to work with, so this next fight as well is looking solid for them. There's no cracks in the defense thus far. Hanbin and Nosmite have really been shut down. They're just not farming ult very quickly at all.
It is solid to a degree. The one thing is that EMP is the equalizer, but the early grab, they take the initiative. They don't wait for Soon to try and drop an EMP, but look at the EMP in the back. Hits 5. And even with the initiative, the EMP is so devastating that the Eternal are still able to turn the fight a little bit more in their favor. And now the Gladiators in a little bit in a tougher spot, but Kevster, 2, both teams back and forth. But you have the Eternal on the point, you have the tanks on the point, and the Gladiators, I think they just took too much damage.
I don't know what Nosmite's doing in the backline, but he did kill both supports, so it's certainly a good play, staying alive there. And so Gladiators, they will be sent back to the next point. I like the aggression in theory, but just hard counter pretty much by the sound barrier. So much damage pouring into the grab, but it's just not enough. I mean, that is textbook sound barrier usage, right? No EMP to counter, and you just block a huge burst of damage. There's hardly a more ideal situation for the ultimate.
So the Eternal, 4 minutes left, a much quicker time bank thus far, and they still have Graviton on deck. Meanwhile, for the Gladiators, Jake, it's all about Kevster landing a good EMP. Has to use it immediately in response to the Graviton. Paris a little bit low. Gladiators, Mirror and Big Goose getting incredibly low. Both teams throw it back out to a degree. Kevster under heavy fire. Hanbin and Soon, though, starting to connect. 2 for the Eternal. And this is crazy momentum going against the Gladiators.
Yeah, I love that jump across the high ground by Hanbin using the right click. It enables him to get in with that perfect grab. And Kevster's forced to just EMP there instantly. That's really all he can do. And he does not find the coal, so he's missing a lot of damage.
Gladiators now trying to stagger out, look for any miracle to bring it back. Transcendence just to keep the fight in progress, including an emergency Roadhog swap from OG, and does not last long, Jake.
No, not at all, ZP, and a big time bank advantage for the Paris Eternal. I mean, it all crumbled so quickly for the Los Angeles Gladiators. They look so solid, and at 5 ultimates there, you know, to be honest, I see why they wanted to get aggressive, maybe counter the EMP before it could come down, but at the same time, I think they would have been better served playing a long fight there. Maybe they didn't realize the extent of their ultimate advantage, but remember, Hanbin and Nosmite did not have ultimates going into that fight, and they were, you know, 60% each, so not realistic that they're going to actually charge those ultimates quickly at all. I think if the Gladiators had played that first defense just a little bit slower, like let the EMP come down, save your teammates with Trance and Rally, you know, then look for the grab, I think it could have gone better for them. They could have had a first hold, so this time make may not matter too much if the Gladiators can fix that mistake next time around.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at how long the Gladiators were able to defend for. It was pretty good, so I don't think it's entirely out of reach. Now, the kind of reset, and mention what's at stake. The Eternal, it's not just about winning the series to them here. They're looking for the 3-0, to maintain their advantage over the Shock, to make it so their destiny is still in their own hands and not hoping that the Shock get another map loss. So the Eternal winning this map in particular, let alone the series, very important to Paris. And they're very close to accomplishing that now.
Yeah, they definitely have an undeniable lead here. This is not the sort of small time make advantage. This is a massive time make advantage. So Gladiators, they have to come out swinging right now. At the very least, they need a lot of progress on point A, but they would love to even cap that point, maybe get something on point B to give themselves security next round.
Gladiators have to be quick. There's just no disputing that. 42 seconds left to go. It's 2 fights if they die quickly, only 1 if they dilly-dally around. OG, he's gonna have poke damage over the top, but Hanbin charged up, just pierces through, and the Gladiators, 1 fight. But look at Hanbin, that's nuts! Absolutely crazy!
Hanbin just flipped the switch there. I think they learned from their mistakes trying to play things slow against the Brig Zen who generate value over time. Instead, they just go all in with their Moira. Fielder can just hold that left click down, and Hanbin just goes in with absolutely no fear, roasts Mirror first, and then there's just no threat left. So realistically now, Gladiators in a desperate scenario. Someone's got to touch, but it'll be suicidal.
The Eternal being heavily aggressive. Nico, though, falls for it, but so does OG. That's a much bigger prize, and oh no! The Gladiators can't even get to the point. So now, Jake, we're in what has to be one of the most crushing scenarios for a player. And I mean, this is where you could give some insight. You're a pro player. You know that you cannot win the map anymore. The most you can do is draw, and the time bank against you is fearsome. What are you truly thinking right now?
I mean, I'd be focused on right now is how do we do what we did last round, and how do we maybe slow things down when we have the ultimate tempo advantage? Because winning that first fight, it was pretty decisive. There were some close moments. For instance, Big Goose dropped low to a hack from Soon. So if they can just watch out from Soon's hacks, I think it is a little bit harder to do that, all-in rush with your Moira when you're playing on offense. So for the Gladiator side, their comp, I think, should be a little bit easier to execute on defense. Winning that first fight decisively is the first step. Then it's all about utilizing the ultimate economy to perfection. You want to be aggressive, but not so aggressive that you end up overextending yourself. Like for Mirror, I want him to be grabbing in a comfortable sightline for Shaz. Make sure that Shaz can follow up on the grab. Obviously the DPS and OG are going to be in there on the grab as well, but Shaz with the Discord Orb really will make the difference when it comes to chopping through a sound barrier.
So the Gladiators in a very tough spot. If they want to take the series, they have to draw this out and get to another map. Not easy with a 3-minute, 23-second time bank coming in for the Paris Eternal, but not impossible either. They're just going to have to channel what they had from the first defense and improve on it, especially when it comes time for the EMP.
Yeah, and I think for Hanbin's side, he's going to want to find that moment to get just, psycho-aggressive, all-in YOLO push onto Mirror, but, Mirror just needs to find that middle ground between aggressive enough to build energy, passive enough to dodge that play. OG's hacked, but I don't think he'll be punished for this.
Yeah, I mean, there is pressure coming on the OG, but he's in such a good spot that I don't think the Eternal can immediately punish him for it. But the Eternal, they know time is on their side. They can work on the outskirts. They can wait for the opportunity to present itself right now. And this is tough for the Gladiators. One mistake, series likely over. No, there it is. Soon with 3, and they say he's not a fragging Sombra. Think again. The Eternal, that's going to seal it. A clean sweep, and they keep their edge over the Shock.
Paris Eternal remain in control of their destiny. They are going to be the 1 seed now going forward into the next week, and unless the Washington Justice can take a map off them, they will be the 1 seed going into that Countdown Cup, which has got to be a confidence boost going into playoffs. Imagine if they could win 2 of those tournaments back-to-back going into playoffs. FD God said, it's not just the meta, we are a top team. This is proof positive, right? This is a very different comp, very different strategy. And to be fair, it's one that I think should suit the Gladiators. They're a team that is very good at dive comp. So for the Paris Eternal to take this win and in dominating fashion and flexing more of their roster than we usually see, there's nothing to be worried about if you're a fan of the Eternal.
Yeah, meanwhile, if you're a fan of the Shock, that's a little bit depressing, isn't it? Where you look at the next week and you go, we need Justice to take a map. Oh, we need Justice to take a map. Right now, the way the team's been playing, that is not a great place to be. But it really speaks to how well the Eternal have been playing to keep up their level of excellence from the Summer Showdown, bring it into the Countdown Cup qualifiers, and still every bit look like the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, well, Shock, they might end up being the 1 seed here, but I don't think you're going to count the San Francisco Shock out from beating the Paris Eternal when it comes down to just the seeding. The last time those 2 teams clashed, it was incredibly close. Sparks flew, and it just barely come up the way of the Eternal. So I think that's a matchup that everyone is waiting to see. And very realistically, I could see those teams being, the 1 and 2 seeds. Could see them clashing in the finals of the Countdown Cup. And I think that's something that any Overwatch League fan is excited to see.
Well, this brings us to the player of the match presented by Xfinity, and I think there's one obvious choice here, and it is Hanbin, where throughout the entire series, just kind of making you sit back and go, wait, what just happened? Did Zarya really do all that contribution? And the answer was yes. Hanbin playing out of his mind and really enabling the crazy aggression we saw from Paris here today.
Yeah, it's a real feast or famine hero there on the Zarya, but Hanbin, he was eating good tonight. Really impressive stuff, consistently confident in his team, and just knowing when to, play passive, build up those energy stacks, gain strength, and knowing when he has the power to just, hold that W key down and just lay out the particle beam, destroy the enemy Zarya. And that was really a consistent performer for the Eternal, especially, I think, playing those Zarya plus McCree comps. How could you worry about Xe when you have to deal with Hanbin just running it down mid, and vice versa? So I think the Paris Eternal playing a more conservative support comp that enables players like Hanbin, it makes a ton of sense when you see just how good he is at the Zarya.
Oh, that's a stat that just got whispered into my ear. Oh, wow. 10.9 final blows per 10 for Hanbin. What in the world? That is quite high, especially for an off-tank. Even if it's Zarya, that's a performance.
I mean, Zarya is one of those heroes where at 100 energy, like at 0 energy, Zarya is like half of a hero. I mean, you're pretty useless in terms of actual damage output. You're one of the weakest heroes in the game. Whereas you go to 100 energy, you're like 2 heroes in 1 in terms of like your raw potential. And that just gets only amplified when you can just get crazy aggressive, when FD God can play the Lucio Moira. Like, especially those comps, like the Lucio Moira comp, it doesn't really enable anybody in the lineup you're playing besides the Zarya. Like, it's not really the best for Winston. It's okay for Winston. It's certainly not the best for Tracer and Sombra. But the player who absolutely loves that is Hanbin. He gets sped boosted around everywhere, got a personal taxi. He's got a personal heal bot in the form of Fielder's Moira. And, you can see how he puts it to work there. Just the level of aggression he puts out when he has the advantage is really unmatched. And I think this comes back to what I was talking about before the match. He's an incredibly talented DPS player as well. And Zarya is the place you showcase that.
And you take a look at the standings. Paris locking in that #1 seed for now. There's still one more week of play, so there's still a chance things could change. But I got to tell you, the way Paris is playing right now, especially against the Gladiators team that looked very, very good and competent yesterday, bringing Philly to 5, I think Paris is going to be the #1 seed heading into the Countdown Cup proper, because they're playing out of their minds right now.
Yeah, they're in control of their own destiny, and I think the toughest hurdles are behind them now. So for a team like the Justice that has struggled as of late, I think they're going to be pretty scared, to be honest, going up against the Paris Eternal next week. I think there's not many teams in the Overwatch League right now that should be confident playing against the Eternal. Even a team like the Shock, you can bet, is respecting them, prepping for them, thinking about how things are going to break down in the Countdown Cup.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be. I think right now, if you're Krusty and you're just making your war plans right now, you're thinking about how to approach the latter part of the Countdown Cup. I mean, there's a huge part of your mind just dedicated to how do you beat Paris, because they are just that good right now, and it's absolutely terrifying to the rest of the league.
Yeah, it should be, right? Like, what they've looked so good on is not just one comp, not just one meta, but their whole roster. And, when we looked and we thought about in the past, historically, what it makes a team, the best team in the Overwatch League, it always goes beyond, oh, we've got a strong 6 and we've got a good meta. Like, it always has to go beyond that. So the fact that, like, I'm looking at Ben Best, right? Thought of as, oh, he's a Rhine player. He's going to stick to the Rhine. He brings out the Orisa. He looks absolutely great. Perfect combos with Sparkle. Love it. Then now we see a meta where no Spite needs to play to bring out the Winston. They look incredibly well practiced, well coordinated. Even when, they're up 2-0, they bring out their second string DPS players in Soon and Nico. And I mean, talk about a second straight, like that would be a first string on most teams. They had great performances early on in the season, and the fact that they're still winning with these players, despite Sparkle being this obscene superstar, real candidate for Rookie of the Year, besides Xe as well. There's just no weaknesses right now in this Paris Eternal roster. You need to beat them, head to head on their strengths, and not many teams, I think, are really a threat in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about their strengths, and you look at what we just saw in Volskaya.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
I don't know. We'll see if the fans can hear us or if we're just all looking at a wall of text. Oh, we're back. All right. Welcome back, everybody.
Hello. Yeah.
Don't know where we lost you, but we're just hyping up the Eternal, man. They look so good. And talking about especially their versatility, their depth. This hero pool, I think, has been, to be honest, one of the most exciting ones. Get a hero like Orisa out of here. Nobody wants to see that. Like, let's see the Zarya pop off. Let's see her send it down mid. And we got exactly what we wanted here today with Hanbin. I mean, just a disgusting performance. Absolutely tearing through the enemies with that particle beam.
Yeah, and just reminding people what aggressive Overwatch can look like, where, I mean, there's points here where you watch enough games as a caster, there's kind of an ebb and flow, and you go, all right, the team's going to go up to this point, and that's going to be it. There were multiple fights going on today where there were 2 two flank fights essentially where both teams were diving into each other, but the Eternal, they were the ones violating the terms of engagement where normally it'd be the main fight would be where the Gladiators were bringing it, but the Eternal goes, no, you think we're supposed to fight inside our base on Volskaya? What if we fight you outside of it? What if we dive almost nearly to your spawn and then we actually make it work? It's just nuts coming out from the Eternal, and it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think certainly the way they played those fights is just proof positive that they're feeling very confident right now, trusting in each other. You know, Fielder's able to just run in, drop a damage orb, drop the Cole, and he's like basically initiating that fight, which is a rare sight to see on the Moira. So I think when a team starts to feel that way, it starts to be less about individual skill. Like, of course, there's a ton of individual skill. You don't feel that confident unless you already have that skill. But I think that level of confidence is what sort of brings the edge, what allows you to perform, especially when you get to those super high pressure scenarios. In order to be in that mental state where you don't feel the pressure and you can just play your best, that is where the confidence, you know, the laughter, the willingness to like, dude, let's just dive. Like, I don't know, let's just go. Like, let's just kill them all. Like, you need that. You need that fearless, almost crazy level of confidence to step up against some of the other best teams in the league right now.
And I think the other teams in the league should be looking at this and taking notes, really, especially teams like the Fusion, where if you're the Fusion looking at this, you go, wait, the Gladiators brought us really to the brink, and they just got stomped by the Eternal. We have to level up. But you know what? We need a little bit more insight on everything that just broke down, and that's why we got Hanbin with Zoe.
We do indeed. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Hanbin and Navala, thank you so much for joining us on our show.
Hello.
So, of course, congratulations to you and your team on this absolute dominant performance going up against the Gladiators, who looked really good yesterday. They did lose against the Fusion, however, they played it close. Watching their game yesterday, did you make any adjustments to your game plan coming into your game today?
그 글래디에이터가 어제 퓨전 상대로 지기는 했지만 굉장히 좋은 경기력을 보여주었는데 파리는 그 경기를 보고 무슨 생각을 했고 혹시 어제 경기를 보고 전략적으로 바꾼 것이 있었어요?
글래디가 되게 자리아를 뒤로 빼서 한다는 것을 알아서 저희가 원숭이를 돌리거나 아니면은 좀 더 공격적으로 해서 상대의 원숭이를 포커싱하는 쪽으로 전략을 바꿨어요.
So we noticed that Gladiators use their Zarya pretty far back. So we sent our Monkey to look at the Zarya, or we were focusing on Monkey a lot aggressively so that the Zarya could get less value.
Well, absolutely. And you in turn got a lot of value out of your Zarya. Absolute phenomenal performance, earning you the player of the match honors as well. Were you at all surprised that this was a bit of a one-sided affair? Did you think that the Gladiators were going to play it a little bit closer against you?
글래디에이터의 오늘 경기력에 대해서 어떻게 생각하셨나요? 혹시 더 경기가 어려울 것이라고 예상하셨나요?
원래는 경기가 좀 더 어려울 거라고 생각했는데 글래디가 저희가 전력을 잘 짜서 그런지 몰라도 글래디가 쉽게 무너지더라고요.
So we did expect a closer match, but I don't know if it was because our strategy was so good. The Gladiators fell to us pretty easily.
Right on. Well, love the confidence, and it's well founded based on the performances we've seen of you guys lately. Looking at all the different compositions you guys have been playing, you showed us a lot of different looks. Now, that does worry some people that maybe you spread your practice time too thin, trying out all these different things. How do you as a team stay on the same page and make sure that each composition and look you're actually playing is played on a very high level?
매번 굉장히 파리가 다양한 조합을 보여주기 때문에 모든 조합을 충분히 연습하지 못할 거라는 생각이 들어요. 어떻게 매번 다른 조합에도 불구하고 파리는 늘 좋은 모습을 보여주시나요?
저희가 완벽하게 하지는 못하는데 코치님들이 굉장히 잘 알려주시고 좀 쉽게 알려주시는 것 때문에 좀 더 저희가 다른 팀들보다 적응이 빠른 것 같아요. 메타가 바뀔 때마다.
So of course we can't be perfect in all of the composition, but our coaching staff makes the meta understandable more easily, and they coach you pretty easily. So whenever the meta switches, we are able to adjust to different metas pretty easily due to our coaching staffs.
Right on. Well, shout out to the coaching staff doing a phenomenal job alongside the players, of course, who then execute on the servers. Hanbin, once more, congratulations to you and your team. Alvala, thank you so much for joining as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to head into a very quick break, and afterwards we will be back with the second game of the day, which will be fought out between the Toronto Defiant and the Philadelphia Fusion. Stick around.